Picture an island bigger than Sri Lanka, with misty forests, jagged cliffs, and rivers that carve through ancient valleys. Now imagine that barely anyone lives there. Tasmania, Australia's forgotten gem, sprawls across 68,401 square kilometers, larger than some countries, yet only 570,000 people call it home. That's less than 2% of Australia's population. Compare that to Sri Lanka, roughly the same size, with 22 million people packed in. Or Florida, twice as big but bursting with 21 million. So why is this massive, breathtaking island practically empty? Is it cursed, unlivable, or hiding something nobody wants to talk about? The answer takes us deep into a story of blood, wind, and a future nobody saw coming. Stick with me, because Tasmania's secrets are about to unravel. Let's start with the sheer strangeness of it all. Tasmania is huge, 68,401 square kilometers of wild, untamed beauty. That's bigger than Switzerland, Denmark, or even Sri Lanka, which crams 22 million people into less space. Yet Tasmania, with its emerald forests, snow-dusted mountains, and beaches that could rival any tropical postcard, has just 570,000 residents. To put that in perspective, Melbourne alone has nearly 10 times that number in a fraction of the land. Only 2% of Australians choose to live here, despite the island's jaw-dropping landscapes. You'd think a place this stunning would be swarming with people, right? So what's keeping them away? Is it the remoteness, the weather, or something darker buried in its past? The truth is, Tasmania's emptiness isn't just about geography. It's a story that spans thousands of years, woven with tragedy, resilience, and a future that's starting to spark curiosity across the globe. To understand why this island stays so quiet, we need to go back, way back, to a time when it wasn't empty at all. Tasmania's landscapes are the kind you'd expect to see on a bucket list travel vlog. Cradle Mountain's jagged peaks pierce the clouds, while the Bay of Fires glows with orange lichened rocks against turquoise waves. It's the kind of place that makes you wonder why anyone would choose Sydney's traffic over this. But numbers don't lie. Tasmania's population density is a mere 8 people per square kilometer, compared to Australia's overall 3.4 or Sri Lanka's 340. Even within Australia, Tasmania feels like a ghost town next to bustling hubs like Brisbane or Perth. This isn't just a quirk, it's a mystery. Why does a place this big, this beautiful, feel so ignored? The answer starts with a history that's as brutal as the island's winds. Let's dive into that. Long before anyone called it Tasmania, this island was home to the Palawa people, who thrived here for over 65,000 years. That's one of the oldest continuous cultures on Earth. They hunted wallabies, fished the crystal rivers, and told stories under skies so clear you'd swear you could touch the stars. Their connection to the land was deep, almost spiritual, with every mountain and coastline holding meaning. But in 1803, everything changed. British ships arrived, and with them came a shadow that would nearly erase this ancient world. The Palawas' harmony with the land was shattered by what history calls the Black War, a conflict so brutal it's hard to fathom. By the 1820s, tensions between indigenous locals and British settlers exploded. The newcomers wanted land for farming and settlements, and they weren't asking politely. What followed was a campaign of violence that some historians call a near genocide. Families were torn apart, communities wiped out, and by the 1830s, only a few hundred Palawa remained. The survivors were rounded up and sent to remote islands, their culture nearly erased. Imagine the haunting silence that fell over the land, once alive with songs and stories, now echoing with loss. This wasn't just a tragedy, it set the tone for Tasmania's identity as a place apart, stained by a past most would rather forget. But the island's dark history didn't end there. Something else was brewing, a reputation that would keep people away for centuries. The scars of colonization didn't just affect the Palawa, they shaped how the world saw Tasmania. To outsiders, it wasn't a paradise. It was a place of exile and pain, and that reputation was about to get even darker. In 1803, the British didn't just see Tasmania as a new frontier, they saw it as a solution. They named it Van Diemen's Land and turned it into one of the most notorious penal colonies in history. Over 75,000 convicts were shipped here between 1803 and 1853, chained and broken, to serve sentences in places like Port Arthur. This wasn't your average prison. Port Arthur was a nightmare of floggings, solitary confinement, and back-breaking labor in freezing rain. The island's isolation was its greatest asset. Surrounded by shark-infested waters, escape was nearly impossible. For many, Tasmania wasn't a home. It was a dungeon at the edge of the world. While the mainland started to bloom with cities like Sydney and Melbourne, Tasmania stayed stuck in the shadows. Even after the convict era ended, the island struggled to shake its reputation. In the late 19th century, mining and agriculture brought brief booms. Tin, gold, and apples put Tasmania on the map for a moment. But it was always one step behind. Sydney had ports and trade routes. Melbourne had gold rush wealth. Tasmania? It had rugged hills and a past that made people uneasy. Even as the shackles came off, the island couldn't escape its image as a place you'd rather not be. And yet, something else was keeping people away. Something bigger than history. Let's talk about the land itself. Tasmania isn't just remote, it's wild, almost defiant. Picture a place where mountains rise like jagged teeth, where dense forests block out the sun, and where cliffs plunge straight into the sea. The Central Highlands are a maze of peaks and valleys, making farming or building a city a logistical nightmare. The West Coast? It's all steep, rocky shores pounded by waves that seem angry at the world. Compare that to the mainland's golden beaches and sprawling plains, and you start to see why Tasmania feels like it's fighting to stay empty. Then there's the weather. Tasmania's climate is cold, wet, and unpredictable. Not exactly the sunny Aussie dream. Winters bring icy winds, and summers are mild at best. While Sydney basks in 25 degrees Celsius sunshine, Tasmania is often shivering at 15 degrees Celsius, with rain that feels like it's mocking you. It's not unlivable, but it's not inviting either. The rugged terrain and moody weather make everything harder. Growing crops, building roads, even just getting around. It's as if the island itself is saying, stay out. And if that wasn't enough, there's a force even fiercer than the land itself. A force that shapes everything about Tasmania. Ever heard of the Roaring Forties? They're not a band or a sports team. They're the relentless winds that scream across the Southern Ocean between latitudes 40°S and 50°S. Tasmania sits right in their path, especially its western coast, where gusts can hit 100 km/h like it's just another Tuesday. These winds bring storms that lash the island with rain and churn the seas into chaos. For centuries, they've made life here tougher than on the mainland. Farming? Good luck with crops when the wind rips them out of the ground. Building? Hope you like reinforcing everything twice. Even ships struggle to dock on the west coast, where waves crash like they've got a personal grudge. But Tasmanians are a tough bunch. They've learned to live with the Roaring Forties, building homes that hunker down against the gales and communities that laugh in the face of storms. It's a resilience born of necessity, a kind of stubborn pride in surviving where others might give up. But what if this curse, this wild, untamed force, could become a blessing? What if the very thing pushing people away could pull them back? Here's where the story takes a turn. Those Roaring Forties, the same winds that make life so hard, have turned Tasmania into something extraordinary, a global leader in green energy. In 2020, Tasmania hit a milestone that made headlines worldwide. It became 100% powered by renewable energy. Hydroelectric dams, fed by the island's rushing rivers, produce most of the power, but wind turbines, spun by those ferocious Roaring Forties, are catching up fast. It's a feat few places on Earth can match. While the mainland still leans on coal, Tasmania's running on water and wind, with plans to export clean energy to Australia's grid. This isn't just a feel-good story, it's a game-changer. The Roaring Forties, once a barrier, are now an asset, spinning turbines and powering homes. It's sparked talk of Tasmania as a green powerhouse, a model for a world desperate for sustainable solutions. But here's the kicker. If this island is so beautiful, so powerful, why isn't everyone flocking here? Why does it still feel like a secret nobody wants to share? Let's get to the heart of it. Tasmania's emptiness isn't just about history or weather, it's about cold, hard reality. Jobs are scarce compared to mainland cities like Sydney or Melbourne, where tech, finance, and media thrive. Tasmania's economy once leaned on mining, forestry, and apples, but those industries have dwindled. Tourism and niche sectors like whiskey distilling are growing, but they can't compete with the mainland's urban buzz. Then there's infrastructure, or the lack of it. Roads are narrow, airports are small, and high-speed internet can be a pipe dream outside Hobart. Want a top-tier university? You'll need to leave the island. And speaking of Hobart, it's a charming city, but it's far. A flight to Melbourne takes 2 hours, a ferry takes 10. That distance isn't just physical, it's mental. Tasmania feels like another world, cut off from Australia's hustle. Locals love the quiet life, the small-town vibe where everyone knows your name. But for outsiders, that isolation can feel like a trap. Yet something's stirring on this quiet island, something that could change everything. Here's where things get exciting. Australia's mainland is heating up, literally. Climate change is pushing temperatures higher, with cities like Sydney hitting 40 degrees Celsius in summer. Tasmania, with its cooler climate and lush landscapes, is starting to look like a haven. In recent years, whispers have grown louder. Could Tasmania become a climate refuge? Eco-tourists are already flocking to its wilderness areas, from the Tarkine rainforest to Freycinet's pink granite peaks. Posts on X from 2024 and 2025 buzz with speculation about a population boom driven by remote workers who don't need city offices anymore. But it's not all rosy. Controversies are brewing. In 2024, protests erupted over logging in native forests, with activists clashing over plans to preserve Tasmania's UNESCO World Heritage areas. Luxury resorts proposed for pristine coasts have sparked debates. Development or destruction? The island's green credentials are a draw, but balancing growth with preservation is tricky. Could this be the start of Tasmania's comeback, or a battle that tears its identity apart? Tasmania's soul lies in its wildness, its history, and its people. The Palawa community, despite centuries of loss, is reclaiming its voice, pushing to protect sacred lands from development. Meanwhile, the island's environmentalists fight to keep its forests and rivers untouched. But pressure is mounting. Tourism is booming. 1.3 million visitors in 2024, a record, bringing cash but straining resources. Tech startups and remote workers are eyeing Tasmania's low cost of living and green lifestyle, but poor infrastructure holds them back. The question is, can Tasmania grow without losing what makes it unique? Speculation is rife. Some say it could become a model for sustainable living, a place where green energy and ecotourism coexist with indigenous stewardship. Others warn that unchecked development could turn it into another crowded resort island. The stakes are high, lose the wild, and you lose Tasmania. One thing's clear, the island's days of being ignored are numbered. From a land scarred by colonial brutality to a green powerhouse battered by the roaring 40s, Tasmania's story is one of resilience against the odds. Its emptiness isn't a curse, it's a paradox born of history, geography, and choices. But as the world changes, so does Tasmania. Its cooler climate, renewable energy, and untamed beauty could make it a refuge, a model, or even a global destination. Will it stay wild and quiet, a haven for those who love its solitude? Or will it become the green capital of the Southern Hemisphere, buzzing with new faces? That's the question Tasmania is asking, and it might just hold the answers to Australia's future. So, tell me, would you move to Tasmania? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories about the world's overlooked corners. What place should we explore next?